Hey, this is Charlie with DEFORMATORY, and we're just taking a bit of a break right now from guitar tracking. Maybe just to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing and how we're doing it and all that kind of stuff. For this album in particular, things are a little bit different for us because this is the first album that we've done without Dan Rogers being a part of the band or a part of our audio production team. So Dan was the audio engineer who worked with us on our first album, In the Wake of Pestilence, and then later joined the band and then worked with us for every other release that we had. So for our second full-length, singles, and all that jazz. And Dan's an incredibly talented audio engineer, and we were really fortunate to not only have him in the band, but also have him be behind our albums and really shape the sound. And we owe a lot of what DEFORMATORY sounds like because of all the hard work that Dan put into that. So this is the first album where we're actually not recording with Dan, so it's a little bit different. For guitars in particular, I'm actually recording them at home in the home studio. So it's a little bit different. I mean, that's not something that I'm particularly used to. I'm kind of used to going to Dan's or somewhere else and recording, and not have to worry about all the controls and all that kind of stuff. So this is all fairly foreign territory to me. And I know it's like the most common basic shit, that's how everyone does it. But for me, I don't do it. That's just not my thing. Like, I don't even fucking use Guitar Pro, you know what I mean? Like, I still tab in Notepad, so this is not really my thing. But it's been a really great learning experience, and we've been able to really kind of dig right into it. Well, we're not recording to a click track. I know that Topon from Apartment 2, who's mixing and mastering, and also who did the drum recording and editing, I know he probably hates the living hell out of us for that, but he really actually captured what we were trying to do. So when we were originally recording the drums, we had sort of created some click tracks, and they weren't great. And to be honest, like, I don't even know what a great click track is supposed to really sound like. But in any event, we brought it to Topon, and he was willing to work with it. But when Neil and I were actually playing the songs to the click, we weren't jiving. We weren't in sync. We weren't locking in, and it felt awkward. And to be honest, we never wanted to record with a click at all for this album. One of our biggest, one of the things that we wish we could maybe go back and do is on our second album, Malediction, where we recorded everything to a click track. And that album sounds great in a lot of ways, and we're really happy with it. And it's a snapshot of where we were in that time. But I think for us, we would definitely, if we could, go back and re-record that record, take away the clicks, and just go with that kind of chaotic energy that you hear on our first album. And because that's actually how we play. And all of the songs for this album, they've all been written in the jam space, right? So it's us just jamming out. There's no clicks, there's no nothing. And we learn the songs and play the songs just like that. And so we're kind of used to it being at a certain inconsistency in the tempo. And in fact, for Neil and I, that inconsistency, or that, I guess, that rawness, or however you want to kind of paint it, really reminds us of some of the early Cryptopsy, early death metal albums that we really, really love. So anyways, long story short, for this album, we're not doing it to clicks, which is comfortable for us, but also poses quite a bit of challenges, especially now as I'm tracking the guitars. How we did it with the drums is we basically, Neil was behind the kit, I was in the room with him, and we were playing at the same time, through like a plug-in or whatever it was, so we could get that live feel and kind of feed off of each other, in those cues. So now fast forward now with the drum tracks done and pretty much edited, I'm coming back in and re-recording. And because there's all these fluctuations in tempos, laying down the guitar tracks is in moments pretty challenging. So the other thing that's quite challenging with the guitar tracking is that we're recording in big takes. So there's no, minuscule punch-ins. It's not note for note. It's none of that stuff that's really prevalent in modern recordings. For us, we're trying to record huge sections at a time. So the challenge is, of course, you play something absolutely killer, and then you get to the very end and you flub it, and it's a retake. So that kind of stuff is a bit of a challenge. But I think that the end result for the guitar tracks and the bass tracks so far gives us the most accurate sound that we actually are as Deformatory. So when you're listening to this album, you're getting what you would hear live, essentially. But of course with just absolute killer production, thanks to Topon at Apartment 2 Recording. So guitar track wise, we wanted to do it a little bit differently in the sense of spending some time with shaping some tones. And the first thing that we did, it was experimenting with some guitars, which is not something that we typically did. So I'll just kind of go through and show you a few of the guitars, and I'll tell you which one I ended up choosing. Alright, so yeah, for the first guitar, this is pretty much my standard guitar, the one I've been playing with for years. I did a rig rundown video on it. I played this live. This is what I wrote every single Deformatory song for this album on. I beat the hell out of it, and it stays like it's a machine. It's perfect. So it's an Ibanez RGR 321X. It's equipped with Seymour Duncan, Nazgul, and Sentient pickups, and the string gauge is about 60 to 13, give or take, and it's a 6-string guitar with a 25.5-inch scale length. So it's not a baritone, it's nothing like that, but this guitar is super tight and really encapsulates, our sound, and I'm really comfortable on it. So this was obviously the first choice for us to record this. It gets professionally set up every time, obviously. And so, but we know this guitar sounds really good. This is the guitar I used to record our single Myosis. So I know that this guitar sounds awesome, gives really good signals, and it plays really well, no intonation issues, absolute flawless for me anyways. So this is guitar number 1. Then guitar number 2 actually is this old guy, and this is the guitar that I recorded in the wake of Pestilence. Now this is a garbage guitar. It's like a Washburn, Oscar Schmidt, or whatever. It's loaded with Seymour Duncan blackouts, and it's been properly set up. It's got a thicker neck profile, almost like a Fender in a way. And when I recorded in the wake of Pestilence, this guitar absolutely killed it and gave me exactly what I was looking for. And so because for this album we're trying to go back a little bit to how we recorded in the wake of Pestilence, no click, kind of live off the floor, really kind of, real sounding. We thought, well fuck, let's bring this old bastard back into the mix and see how it sounds. So this was guitar number 2 that we tried out in the mix. Guitar number 3 is actually, I got this guitar custom built specifically for this recording. So this is a Gorilla MSR6, a custom build. Now Gorilla is a custom guitar maker based out of Montreal, and this is one of their kind of standard models that has been modified and built according to some of my specs. So neck thickness, of course my string gauge was supposed to be factored in. We play in B standard tuning, so of course proper intonation. One thing I wanted different for this guitar is of course no tone knob, just the volume knob, but in the tone position, so that if I'm, because in this album a lot of crazy chord sweeps, and I always tend to hit, because I have shit technique, the fucking volume knob. So putting it right down there allowed just kind of full on attack all the time. And so yeah, so it's a this guitar has a lot of stories with it. You know, sometimes when you go custom, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a smooth process. But in the end, you know, this was one of the guitars, you know, that we wanted to use for this recording a lot. It's got bare knuckle nail bombs, ceramic, not Alnico versions, both in the bridge and neck. And you know, it's a beautiful guitar, absolutely. I mean, Gorilla's known for making like really nice looking guitars. So yeah, so this was guitar number 3, and this was made specifically for the album. So I'll let you know which one we chose in the end. And I got one more guitar for you. And this is this Chapman Ml1 Baritone, which actually is an incredible guitar. And of course, as you know, baritones have a longer scale length, so that's why, you know, the neck seems like super crazy long. Originally, I also had my standard, you know, Seymour Duncan, Nazgul, and Senkin pickups, but I actually switched them out for Chapman Baritone pickups. And it just honestly made this guitar sound absolutely incredible. So one of the cool things about this guitar in particular, it has the kind of push-pull, so you could kind of pop it and you switch like a single coil style sound. And I mean, just a lot of flexibility with this guitar. Really happy with some of the sounds that kind of came out of it. Got one more. It's not really that important in the grand scheme of things, but some people disagree. But yeah, just a bass guitar. Only have the one because, to be honest, I'm not a bass player. And you know, this is also you know, one of the first albums. Like, this is our first full-length album that we did without our bass player Justin. You know, who, you know, this album is actually dedicated to. He passed away earlier this last year. And so yeah, so this bass is has been, you know, properly set up and everything like that. It's just like an Ibanez SDGR. But it sounds really good. You know, the cool thing about this bass in particular is that we worked, my guitar tech and I, to get it to sound really kind of clanky, like old school Cryptopsy shit, and that's what really inspired me in like some of the bass runs and ideas that we ended up coming up with. So yeah, so only one bass. That's sometimes all you need. But yeah, so, you know, from a guitar perspective, that was the thing that we wanted to do this time around, was experiment. Which guitar sounds good for what part? Can we combine them? Would it give us like different dynamics? And also we want to just figure out, you know, would it actually make a fucking difference or not? And it turns out it actually makes a huge difference. So we ended up, for all the rhythm tracks, going back to the Ibanez for a number of reasons. The comfortability, the consistency. This guitar will stay in tune no matter what you do to it. It's a fucking mystery to me. So I mean, sometimes I'll leave this at a rehearsal space in super, you know, awkward temperatures, not humidity controlled. This thing has gone out on the road, you know, thrown in the back of everything, and honestly, it still stays in tune. It's remarkable. And honestly just plays so smooth, and also, you know, there's a comfortability, because this is what I wrote all the songs on. But, you know, at the end of the day, when you're listening back to the DIs, or the direct recordings, and you're listening back to the mix itself, just in the early tracking, this guitar just stands out and has that extra little bit of like sparkle, bite, and clarity that I needed for this, for a lot of the parts here. So this is a guitar that tracked both the rhythm tracks, and for leads and kind of textures, went with old Barry here. So this baritone, man, it fucking sounds absolutely incredible, especially if you're playing leads up high. The string tension and its resonance is absolutely stellar. So this has actually been a real joy to track with, and you know, it's really good for leads. And although this album is not really lead centric, it definitely, you know, needs, when they do come in it needs that push, and the Chapman Barry fucking does it without a doubt. But yeah, so essentially the guitar tracking has been very simple. I mean, we just kind of plug right into, we have a couple of interfaces, we plug right in, and basically just try to play with Neil as fast as possible for as long as possible. Yeah, so actually what we ended up doing for the recording of the guitar tracks is Neil laid down all the drums at Apartment 2 recording. Topon did some edits, get them all lined up, and then sent me one huge file that had all 9 tracks, drum tracks done in. Now Topon's a nice guy, he added some click tracks, but I fucking deleted that shit like as soon as I started. I'll probably regret saying this because I probably should have used it, but anyways. And then there was a scratch track, basically the guitar that I was playing silently with Neil, and it was a garbage scratch track. I couldn't really hear myself, the plug-in it was just like that situation sucked. So basically what I ended up recording to was just the drum track alone, no reference, no nothing like that. And the first 2 or 3 tracks I think was a bit challenging. And then I got into the groove. So recording all of the guitar tracks took less than a week, and recording all of the bass tracks took also less than a week. So I was able to do 4 or 5 songs in one day on the bass and things like that. So it moved pretty quickly. And that was the thing that we were hoping for with tracking guitars. We hoped that we had practiced enough and got the songs down enough that the playing would be good enough to be on a recording. And so I hope that's the case. Either way, it's the most real sounding thing that we've put together since In the Wake of Pestilence, and we're really, really fucking happy with how things are turning out so far. When it comes to bass on this album, there was a couple things that we thought about, right out of the gate before we started. The first thing, of course, is, this is the first album that we've recorded, our first full length, without Justin on bass. And Justin had a really unique bass style. He played finger traditional, and he was a really interesting bass player. So one of the considerations that we had recording the bass on this album without Justin was, do we try and mimic his style? Do we pay, tribute to the work that he did? Or do we just try and come up with something maybe a little bit different? And for our single My Assist, I recorded bass on this thing. And Dan, who helped to record all the albums and was our audio engineer forever, told me to play with a pick just for extra clarity and to kind of give it like that extra punch that our music needs. I mean, like, we're in B standard tuning, heavily distorted, million miles an hour. End up using a guitar pick, but a different one than we usually do. These are these in-tune guitar picks that we got made with our logo and stuff on them. And they're actually a little softer, and what I ended up doing was just kind of sanding around the edges a little bit to kind of give it more of a rounder feel. And I used these picks to record the album. We went with the Neural DSP plugin, the Parallax, and it had a lot of really good presets, and we were able to tweak them and add some like distortion and kind of punch to it. That we thought really complemented the style that we wanted to write the bass in. And we wanted the bass to be written in kind of like a, like old school death metal, where you could kind of hear it kind of clanking in the background, and like, in the break you could kind of do like a really high kind of thing and a pop and like all sorts of weird stuff. And so that was the kind of style that we wanted to kind of go in. So the Neural DSP plugin actually really helped us with that, helped us in creating the bass style. The other interesting thing is the whole album was written just one guitar and drums the whole time, right? So it was just Neil and I working on tracks for the whole album. So we never had the second guitar track playing in the rehearsal space with us really. Maybe a few songs in the beginning, and we certainly never had like a proper bass player or a proper bass part. So all these songs were on the album were written like on bass, were written like as I was playing them. So that was the other really cool thing, is that the bass parts themselves were written and recorded at the same time in real time, with like these drum tracks that are like, without a click or anything like that. So really cool. Alright, so this is what the plugin sounds like. Sounds really sweet, has a lot of low end, and the more you pick it, like the more you attack it, the more the distortion really kind of rings through, and it sounds really fucking cool. So you could do something like nice and controlled and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so really happy with how the bass ended up turning up. Now, another interesting thing is that because I'm not a bass player, and because I have these like sensitive little guitarist fingers, there was a lot of parts, like you're just going up and down the neck like this. Like actually there is a riff that this is the riff. It's like dun dun, it's stupid. It like literally goes pretty much like that. And there was a part when I was recording it where I honestly thought I'd slice my fingers right off. So yeah, this little guy over here, which is like a spare beanie, ended up being my savior in a lot of like parts where I was going from top to bottom like really fast in rapid succession. And so now I was able to just play that part and not worry about slicing my fingers. So yeah, there's a few parts on this album where got the old beanie fingers going, just so I could stay on schedule and get everything done. So yeah, so the bass was a fun instrument to track on this album, especially because we were writing it as we were recording it. And we didn't try to deviate too much, but we tried to give it its own space. And we added a few things in there that were kind of like a throwback to Justin's style, and also a throwback to some early Cryptopsy stuff that we really enjoyed. Where there's maybe a few riffs that we definitely ripped off or got inspired by, however you want to put it. But yeah, so we think that the bass will have a really interesting role on this record, and different than on previous albums for sure. And so yeah, so of course this one is for Justin, and this album's definitely out for him. And I hope he's not looking down on me with judgment or looking up at me with judgment. It's actually what we're working in is Reaper. Pretty standard, paid for a version, it was like $60, totally worth it. And actually what we got here is actually just the drum track. So Topon from Apartment 2, once he finished recording and kind of tweaking some of Neil's drum parts, just put together one large file, all 9 drum tracks in a row. And so basically, just every song has like the stick count of 2 and then right in. And so the way that I've been recording these tracks is literally just hitting record, waiting for the clicks, and just going right in. so what we tried to do, or what we actually did do for this album, is we recorded long sections like that. So full parts, full takes, and at the same time, if you know, kind of like in the zone on a roll and everything was locked in, we just kept going. So there are some songs where you know almost like full guitar takes of the songs were done, you know, as a first pass, and then and it was pretty good. So I mean, yeah, it was a really cool experience in that sense, and it really actually helped to not have like a scratch track for us or a click or anything like that. Just like Neil's drums, you know, what I pretty much would do is I would just listen to the drum track first on its own, kind of get the feel, try and pick out where maybe we, you know, unintentionally sped up or slowed down or whatever, and then yeah, I just went to town on it, and yeah, the results have been really good. So in fact, you know, a big part of this is you know, a huge thanks to Neural DSP for putting together some fucking cool plugins that actually I enjoy using, and it really helped with facilitating the recording process. And the final part of the recording process involved taking those clean signal recorded tracks that we did at home using the Neural DSP plugins for both guitar and bass, and then sending them to Topon over at Apartment 2 Recording for a reamping session. So for guitars, we actually used a combination of PV5150 120 watt amplifiers. Now these are the exact same amps that we use in the rehearsal space, so it was a really natural sound, something that we were really comfortable with. We boosted both of the PV5150s with the Aris Effects Savage Drive, and it gave exactly the sound that we were all used to hearing over in the rehearsal space. We tried out a bunch of different cabinets, but ended up settling on the oversized Mesa 4x12 cabinet. It just had everything that we were looking for, and although we don't play through Mesa 4x12 cabinets, this one sounded the absolute best in the mix itself. For bass, we basically just used this killer PV bass head that Topon had kicking around the studio, threw on an overdrive pedal in front of it, and it gave exactly that sound that we were looking for. All of the leads were again recorded through the PV5152, and all we did was added a delay and some reverb. All of the guitar tones that actually came out from the reamping session were exceptionally real, exceptionally organic, and of course, most importantly, were definitely ones that we were already used to, and it just sounded absolutely crushing. You know, and the end result has been an amazing, heavy, killer, and clear mix that sounds real and that sounds exactly like us. That sounds exactly like what you would hear in the rehearsal space.